Game Time with Boomer Esiason. This week's guest is the New York Giants all-time leader in rushing and all-purpose yards, three-time Pro Bowler and best-selling author Tiki Barber. Presented by Geico.
At the University of Virginia, this high school valedictorian had a 4.0 grade point average and called himself a nerd. That's his words, not my words. A business major who just happened to play football. Well, he just happened to break every rushing record for the Cavaliers. And when he played for the New York Giants from 1997 to 2006, every team record fell by the wayside as well. It is my pleasure to welcome Big Blue's all-purpose threat, Tiki Barber. Tiki, great to see you, my man.
Thank you, Boomer. How are you
How
doing?
does a guy from Roanoke, Virginia, who's a identical twin, turn out to be such a great running back for Virginia and then the New York Giants?
Circumstance. You know, I was in the right places at the right time. I went to University of Virginia. I was a kick returner. Charles Way, who people in New York will remember, he was my fullback. And I remember him always just beating down on me, like, you're not big enough, you're not strong enough. And eventually I got my chance. My third season at UVA. So I wasn't a starter until my third year at UVA. We were playing the University of Michigan in the Big House in the Pigskin Classic. So it was the opening weekend, and it was the only game on television. Kevin Brooks, who was the scheduled starter, hurt his hamstring like 3 or 4 days before. So I ended up starting that game, and I had 180 yards and this 80-yard touchdown and kind of never looked back from there. But prior to that, I mean, I was headed towards working for Oracle or something.
Yeah,
that was my dream.
Well, it's interesting. I bring up Rondé, obviously your identical twin and everything else, and you guys grew up in Roanoke, Virginia. Yeah, a single mom household, right? Was your mom tough on you guys?
My mom was awesome on us. She let us have our freedom. But if
Right.
we messed up, I mean, it was, let's get the belt. And we got spanked till we were like 16 years old. I mean, I'm not even joking.
But you were a valedictorian, and you were obviously a great football player, other sports as well.
Yeah, track and field we loved, and wrestling we loved as well. But my mom always told me, like, you can be a great athlete today, you can break your ankle tomorrow, and what's left? And so I always applied myself to be the best at everything, including school.
I would imagine that you and Rondé were probably just going after each other the whole time
it
as
was
kids,
awesome.
right?
But it was great because we could always have each other's back, you know. Together we would fight, but don't you dare fight one of us. Because
So did you guys decide in high school that you were going to go to college together, like you were inseparable?
Yeah, we knew we would want to spend those formative years together. For a minute, we thought about, well, maybe we should split up, and it lasted for like 10 seconds. And then all the schools that were coming after us wanted both of us, because Rondé was a high school star, I was a high school star. He was a national champion in the hurdles, and so we were diverse athletes. And I think schools saw us as such. So we knew that we could go as a package deal and not be, you're getting this guy, but take him as well.
So
we knew
Virginia was close to home, so your mom could see you guys play as well.
My mom was a Hokie. My mom went to Virginia
man,
Tech. My
not
dad
easy.
was a Hokie as well.
Right.
All my friends were Hokies, but we decided to go the other way.
Tiki Barber retired as the Giants' all-time leader in both rushing and receiving yardage, yet he started his career rather inauspiciously, tearing a knee ligament after opening as the starting running back for Big Blue. In his 2007 autobiography, Tiki, he writes that the injury derailed the first part of my career. And I know that was a tough injury for you, but I just want to take one step back. Is it true that on draft day you get a call by Jim Fossil, the head coach of the New York Giants, who was my previous offensive coordinator, by the way, with the Cardinals? I got him that job. So anyway, but you didn't even know who he was?
Well, this is his first year. So actually I get a call from Pat Hanlon.
Yes,
right?
who's a PR guy.
Who's a longtime PR guy. And he gets me on the phone with Jim Fossil. And I'm like, Pat Hanlon, I feel like I know that name, but I can't quite place it. So I'll wait for the head coach. And so I get the head coach, and I'm like, Jim Fossil, who the hell is that?
You had no idea?
It took me a long time to figure out who it was. And then ultimately I realized that the Giants were going to draft me with their second pick, which was the 6th pick overall in the second round. And it was exciting. You know, we were playing golf at Birdwood Country Club in Charlottesville. And
this is where Rondé goes to Tampa.
Yeah.
And this is the first time you guys are really separated.
Yep. He had to wait for another like 2 hours before.
And you want to make sure everybody knows that.
Tony Dungy ultimately picked him. Interestingly, 30 picks later, there was only 30 teams at that time. He was the 6th pick in the 3rd round. And there was a point where we were like, man, the Giants are coming up. The Giants are coming up. Maybe they're going to draft you too in the 3rd round. But we realized ultimately that we were going to be split, and it was hard.
Yeah, I would imagine it was hard. And you hurt your PCL your rookie year. And why was that so important?
Well, I remember going into that rookie season, Rodney Hampton was still the starting running back. But early on in camp, his knee was really bothering him. And Jim Skipper, my running back coach, came up to me and was like, Teak, you might be the starter here. Tyrone Wheatley was there as well. But he said, you might be able to be the starter because I picked up the offense really quickly. I was fast. I was agile. And a rookie hadn't started for the Giants, I think, in a long time. Come opening day, I was the starter. And I'll never forget it. Like 80,000, 78,000 people at the old Giants Stadium screaming down. I'm getting introduced in the tunnel. And, I walk out on this gladiatorial field, and we're playing the Philadelphia Eagles, which is a rival. I had a pretty good day. I had a long catch down the sideline, and we ended up winning that game. And I just felt like, man, I'm on my way. Everybody had pegged me as better David Meggett.
Right.
But here I am starting my rookie season. And then we played the New Orleans Saints. It was the old AstroTurf at the Meadowlands. I fell wrong. Someone fell on the back of my knee, and I tore my PCL. It didn't hurt, but it felt odd. I limped over to the sideline. Ronnie Barnes does the test. Yep, you tore your PCL. I'm like, well, what does that mean? He's like, you're probably going to miss a few weeks. Well, a few weeks turned into about a year or 2 years of averageness.
Right.
That's the best word I
Yeah,
can
well, it
use.
was average. But also, Jim told you that he wanted you to return punts.
Yeah.
He wanted you to become a 3rd down back.
Well, I felt myself as a starter. It's like, I'm a starter. And then I remember Jim, corralled me emotionally. And it's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. Be the best 3rd down back in the National Football League, be the best punt returner in the National Football League, and then we'll go from there. Like, Jim saved me more times than
you know
I
why?
want to admit.
Because he could BS with the best of them. I liked him as a coach myself. All right, we'll be back with Giants Ring of Honor and Shriney Tiki Barber right after these messages.
You're watching Game Time with Boomer Esiason.
All right, we're back with 3-time Pro Bowler Tiki Barber, who, get this, folks, was the leading rusher for the Giants in all 80 games he played over his last 5 seasons. That's amazing. That included his incredible 2005 season when he was named first-team All-Pro and Sports Illustrated NFL Player of the Year. So, that was a great honor, and that was a great season for you.
It was.
You had a fumbling problem going into all of this. And, there's a lot of change around you. There were changes of coaches and stuff,
Right.
and I know how much you did like Jim Fossil, and they
did.
decided to move away from him. And, of course, what do they always do? They always go to the opposite type of guy,
Right.
and they bring in Tom Coughlin. He's the sergeant. He's the guy that's going to get everybody in line and make sure everybody's on time. So he worked with you, and I remember his opening press conference. I think he said they were asking about your fumbling problems.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't you worry about that. I'll take care of that. So what did he do to keep you from fumbling?
It really wasn't him. The only thing he did to me was tell me, if you keep fumbling, you're not playing.
That's a good thing.
Period.
It's
And
good
then
motivation.
Gerald Ingram, my running back coach.
Yes.
Running back coach is the best, by the way. Gerald Ingram got me a ball. First of all, he asked me, how strong are you? And I wasn't strong enough. Then he said, technique, what do you do when you're going into contact? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm trying to make myself free. He's like, never move the ball away from your body. So he changed mechanically how I carried the ball.
And you carried it high,
So
did
instead of carrying it like this, and then when you get into contact, covering, this is what you've been told since you were 10 years old. Cover the football like this. The problem is you're exposed under here and you're exposed up top.
Okay.
Right? You can actually get the ball knocked out that way. He said, hold it vertical. So elbow always to your body.
Right.
Vertical, right? High up under your chin. And don't let it leave your body, even if you're in the open field. So there's video of me running wide open like this.
It was crazy because I did a bunch of your games.
That's right.
And I'm like, Tiki's running the weirdest. I've never seen anybody run with the ball
I'll
like that.
tell you something. So, something interesting happened. So, one, I stopped fumbling because with the ball here, as soon as I get into contact, you take your off-ball hand and cover your on-ball wrist so they can't pull it out. Like a lot of times they'll just rip your fingers and whatever it is. You grab yourself here and you go to the ground like this. Most fumbles happen when you reach. Right? So go to the ground like this. Number 2, I actually got faster and more powerful because your arm stride and your leg stride have to match when you run.
But there was also another part of you, though, because going into that season, I guess your running back coach was telling you had to get stronger and bigger up top.
Yeah.
So you went through this crazy workout regimen with Joe Carini over in Jersey.
I met one of the New Jersey's strongest men, Joe Carini, who just started pounding me. I mean, he would create exercises like a squat rack, and he'd put 250 pounds and say, go for a walk. And so he'd go walk for 20 yards, turn around and come back. But what it would do, it strengthened all these stabilizers, muscles that you don't strengthen from static lifting, right? Laying on a bench and lifting, I mean, you're never doing that in a football game.
But this is where you really, truly become a pro, though.
This is when I became powerful, right? I was always a good pro. I always studied.
I always thought of you as a slash back.
Exactly.
But this year, no more.
Well, I became powerful. And so I could slash and break tackles. And so that's when, I started to excel. 2004 was a good year for me, and 2005, as you mentioned, was an iconic year for me.
Not only iconic, but you also dedicated that year to Wellington Mara, didn't you?
Yeah, and Bob Tisch, both owners who I was very close with. I lived in the city, as you know, when I played, and Bob took me under his wing, and I would go everywhere with him.
It's a good wing to be under.
Yeah, no, it was a great wing to be under. It's one of the reasons that I'm on the path that I am post-career was because of Bob. But Wellington and Bob both were sick going into that 2005 season, and Tom Coughlin told us, as a team, no matter what happens this year, we are the team of record for both of our owners because we knew that they potentially might pass, and they did. It was moving and sad, but it was also, I guess for me, because I knew them so well, an opportunity to showcase and pay honor to them by having a great season.
You guys had a lot of unique personalities in this team. I mean, from the head coach to the players to you, Michael Strahan, you name it. And there was this whole thing about you guys were having a meeting with Tom Coughlin to ask where he could back off a little bit. How did that go over?
Well, I mean, interestingly, it wasn't me.
It was Michael.
Exactly.
Right.
Like most of the perception is that I was the bad guy all the time.
Here's your chance to get it out there in the open.
Dude, it was always Strahan. Strahan was the one who got fined early because he was on time, and he's like, dude, if I'm late, then find me. But if I'm on time, in fact, if I'm early and you're still finding me, we got problems.
When you see Michael, do you laugh about these things?
Of course we do.
I would hope so.
But history changes itself when you win championships.
No, it does. And unfortunately, you weren't a part of that championship. But I just wonder, it always seemed like you and Coughlin were a little bit like this.
You know what? Personally, maybe we were, but professionally, we were as close as anyone could be. You watch us on game day; he was always there congratulating me. I was always there with him on game day. We just didn't mesh personally.
Game time will continue after these messages.
You're watching Game Time with Boomer Esiason.
On December 30th, 2006, Tiki Barber broke his own Giants rushing record with 234 rushing yards at Washington. Afterward, he confirmed to reporters that he was retiring, or as he put it, to go out on my own terms, be healthy, and to be proud of what I've accomplished in 10 years is something you can't put a price on. He'd later say his coach was a factor in his surprising decision by saying this: Tom Coughlin took away my passion for football. So you obviously said that you guys didn't really mesh. Don't you feel like, though, you owe him a little something for the success?
I respect the hell out of Coach Coughlin. I'd give him credit for making me focus on the little things. But ultimately, success or failure, life is about how you treat people. Yeah. And he didn't treat us right most of the time. In fact, we got into a major argument right before I retired, actually. We were playing the Jacksonville Jaguars on a Monday night football game, and we threw the ball 60-something times. It was one of Eli's worst games in his early career. And I remember I said something very minute, like, football's not complicated. You have a good running attack, hand the ball off. It forced him to have to reassign Jim Huffnagel, who was our offensive coordinator. And ultimately, Jim left the team, and Kevin Gilbride took over as offensive coordinator. And he came in the next day with all the newspaper articles quoting me and threw them in my face. And we got into an FU match for about 30 minutes. And ultimately, I stormed out of the facility, and he called up to me, and it's like, Tiki, are we all right? I said, we're all right as long as you're telling us that we're trying to win and not make 10 the man, meaning Eli, the man. He wasn't ready to be the man. And he said, we're all right. And so, obviously, the next couple of weeks, we won. We had that Washington Redskins game, which put us into the playoffs. We ultimately lost in the playoffs to the Philadelphia Eagles. But I mean, that was when we started to bat heads, like really bat heads.
And basically, you lost the love of football. You lost the joy of football.
Yeah, because any endeavor that you do, whether it's doing your radio show or starting a business, is about liking the people that you work with. And if you don't, then you tend to start not liking what you're doing.
Did you feel like you were mischaracterized in the media after you decided to retire? Because people were pretty tough on you.
Who walks away from football if you rush for 1,600 yards and 1,800 yards the year before and 1,500 yards?
Yeah, but I don't think people realize how hard running back is and what goes into it.
Of course. I mean, I don't know why people got so upset that I didn't want to do it anymore. Maybe because they felt hurt, or they felt like they could, after the Giants won the Super Bowl the year after I retired, like rub in my face. But I wasn't committed to doing it anymore. I wasn't committed to working out with Joe Carini and deadlifting 500 pounds and squatting a squat rack and walking 20. I didn't want to do that anymore.
Football, you have to commit everything to if you want to be successful.
That's exactly right, Boomer. You know this as well as I do. And as soon as you start getting distracted by other things, like television, which I had been doing for a long time. I started at WCBS. Eventually, I was working at Fox News, doing Fox and Friends during the season.
Right.
And then going to practice and going to games. And then I kind of got to this inflection point, right? You're either going to keep playing football or you're going to pursue this next thing.
You said you lost a step. Did you feel in your heart that, you just weren't the same player?
Yeah. So that last season, there were at least 5 or 6 runs that went for 50 yards, big plays, but should have been 70-yard touchdowns, and I knew it.
Yeah, see, in an athlete's heart, you know.
You know.
You know when you're starting to lose it. All right, we'll huddle one more time with Tiki Barber right after this.
Game Time with Boomer Esiason is back.
Tiki Barber played 10 years in the NFL. He has now spent the last 20 years doing radio and television. I have to tell you, you're like me. You left the field and you went right into this business, which is not
as
easy
hard
business.
as you do, though.
No, yes, you do.
You grind, man.
And I would say both you and I failed when we first started.
That's right.
I failed at ABC Monday Night Football. Yep. You failed with NBC.
The Today Show only lasted 3 years.
Yeah, which is amazing. Any regrets retiring early? Because I think if you go back and you look at your career, which I have done, you were on a trajectory to possibly going to the Hall of Fame like your brother.
True, but here's the thing. My career yardage, and I'm in this unique category of having 10,000 rushing yards and 5,000 receiving yards. Only Marcus Allen and Marshall Faulk have also done that. Most of that yardage came in 3 seasons. Like my first 7 were on par with my last 3. There was an attrition that came with like packing all that production into 3 years. I just didn't physically want to do it anymore. In retrospect, people know, you're smart. You got out with your health and with your brain intact. This was before we knew about the damages from repeated head trauma. And so, I could have stayed and played, but it wouldn't have been because of passion, because I loved it. It would have been because I just want to be here.
And plus, the money was good.
Yeah.
Tell me about your initial criticism of the Giants after you had left, and you talked about Eli and how that whole thing got blown out of proportion. I think it got blown out of proportion, but I understand how the E-Hive and the Eli fans and people around here react to him, and I understand that.
First of all, most people never saw what I said because it was a preseason game on Football Night in America that nobody was watching.
All right, so what did you say?
And so at halftime, they asked me, well, what do you think about, how is Eli lead? And the word that came to mind, with no malice aforethought, was comical, right? Not because he's a bad leader, but because he's funny.
He's a prankster.
He's a prankster.
Yes.
Like I tell this story, like we used to shoot like paper tape across the locker room to get it in the trash can. He comes flying out of nowhere, butt naked, and like smashes it away, and then like gives me this look and walks into the shower, and I'm just like, dude,
a butt naked Eli.
But this is Eli, and
that's the locker room.
But you love them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so that quote got taken, and hey, Eli, did you hear what Tiki said? He said you were a comical leader. Now, uncommon for Eli, he responded to it, which set off this. Well, Tiki and Eli hate each other, and now former great is hating on Eli, and it never was the case. Eli and I cleared the air very quickly. It's persisted for years.
Well,
really,
you're in the Ring of Honor, so everything is good, I think, with
exactly.
Big Blue. One other thing happened in your life. You told me that you grew up fatherless, and your mom Geraldine basically took care of everything. But 4 years ago, you reconnected with your dad.
Yeah.
Now, how did that happen, and why did it happen, and what did that feel like?
So I thank my wife, Tracy. We had our first daughter. This was my second wife. Our first daughter, Brooklyn, and she sent a note to my father because she wanted her kids to know all of her grandparents, if possible. He responded, and so he came and stayed with us. I hadn't seen him in years. We spent 5 hours drinking wine, talking about life.
I appreciate it, Tiki. It's great to have you on, man.
Will.
Good luck the rest of the way. Our thanks to
Appreciate
Tiki
you.
Barber for joining us today, and to all of you out there for watching on Boomer Esiason. And I'll see you again soon right here on Game Time with NFL Hall of Famer and former teammate Anthony Munoz. From writing books to being on TV and radio to doing kinky boots, you know, there isn't a challenge that you won't accept. And I appreciate it, Tiki. It's great to have you on.